Number one ghetto boy. 248-632-PAIN. 24-hour hotline, you know? We specialize in helping auto accident victims. You feel me? Call right now. Hey. Car accidents, they ain't no fun. Know the people you can call for a hit and run. Specialize in helping auto accident victims. It don't matter, they help men, women, and children. Can't spare your wealth without your help. And they 24 hours calling me if you need help. Call for anything, it don't matter what's the reason. They helping everybody, they on deck if you need them. Say somebody hit your car and they kept going. Just call the hotline and we got help coming. They gon' pull right up like they left coming. 248-632-PAIN, that's the best number. Yeah, make sure you call the hotline, we working 24 hours. 248-632-PAIN. You can't spend your wealth without your help, homeboy. You know? Hey, 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 hey. 248-632-PAIN, let's get it.
Hi, and welcome to Attorneys Are Us, a show where we talk about auto accidents, personal injuries, basically anything legal. So that's what we're doing today. We're here with Attorney Thomas Courts, as we are every week. So hopefully he can answer your questions. Feel free to call in. The call-in number is 313-868-0342. You're welcome to call in. And we appreciate you calling in, and hopefully we can answer all your questions. We had a really good show today on the Wellness Report with Helen, where we talked about safety in our schools. And you know that's a big issue since the Valentine's Day killing of 17 people in the Florida school. So I was kind of talking about how we can, develop exit strategies and what we can do in the event something like this would happen. But what I want to ask you, Thomas, is from a legal standpoint, what should these families do?
It's a good question, Ellen. There's a lot of different options for the families. One, obviously, is to sue the alleged perpetrator of the crime directly for the wrongful deaths. And in this case, I'm told that he actually has a decently large inheritance. Obviously, the money's not going to replace your loved ones, but you don't want a murderer walking around with a lot of money after they murder your family. So I would take the money from him out of spite, not to mention there's huge, expenses with burial as well. Secondly, I would evaluate the school and see if there was any negligence on their part and see, if that's an avenue as well.
Now, what about the police? I know that they said that in this situation that the police were called 39 times, and that should raise a red flag, I would think, So is there any instance that you could sue, the police or the FBI or whoever is negligent in this situation?
It's often very tough to sue first responders. There's a thing called sovereign immunity, which means the government is technically immune from being sued by its citizens. However, the government can choose to waive that. So in certain circumstances, the government does. So it's very important to, consult with a lawyer specifically in that region and whatever topic you're dealing with, be it roads, be it a slip and fall, be it first responders, to see what they can do for you.
Because I worry, my son going to school, I entrust the school with my child every day, and if something tragic like this were to happen, I want to know who is liable and what we can do. So is the school, for the children that lost their lives, is there going to be any money available for them, or what happens in this situation?
It's a tough situation. And a lot of people, just like a lot of people look at healthcare as going to your doctor when you're sick or have a symptom, it's really important to actually go to your doctor for your checkup and to avoid getting sick. Very, very few people do that with lawyers. It's really important actually to take care of your legal responsibilities in advance. So one thing is you want to try to get life insurance. Nobody wants to think of that inevitability, but you definitely want to get life insurance. Of course, as we know, the insurance companies often don't live up to what they're supposed to, so you're probably going to need a lawyer anyways in a situation like that if you have life insurance to consult them. You want to get wills in order. You want to get do not resuscitate if you believe in that. If you don't believe in that, you want to make those intentions clear. And it's a very morbid thought, but it actually saves families a lot of pain. You want to kind of plot out what your last wishes are, what you want for a funeral. Do you want to be buried or do you want to be cremated? Because a lot of people, right after a situation, are very emotional, and the last thing they have the energy to do is to plan those services.
Wow, that's so sad. Times I can think of thinking about those things for a child, but it's unfortunate that that's what we have to deal with now in this country. Which leads me to my next question, because I guess a school that would be public, so or unless it's a private school, I'm not sure how that works. But what if someone's injured in a public on public property? Who would be liable, and what should they do?
So you're gonna need to see a lawyer for sure on that one. Again, it's gonna fall under sovereign immunity in a lot of cases, so it's gonna be up to the government to waive their right to avoid being sued. A lot of government entities do that. So something to look into.
Wow. Okay. And also, what about, so it's a difference with personal property, I'm sure. So in the event that you are harmed on personal property, what is that a different situation?
There's a lot of situations. I think it's best to maybe describe generally what civil litigation or what people consider suing somebody, what lies behind that. And you have to have a few elements. The first element is duty. Somebody has to owe you a duty for you not to be injured. So, for example, if I'm hanging out in my living room and I injure myself, I can't sue you if you're at your house because you don't owe me a duty.
Right.
And then secondly, there has to be a breach of that duty. So, for example, let's say you said, "Hey, Tom, come over, come to my store," and you had a big door that said, "Open, come on in, I'm going to sell you something," and you had a pit full of snakes and you had a carpet over it, and I walked on it and hurt myself. Obviously, you had a duty to not do that. You breached it. And then that leads us to our next point. There has to be damages. If something, you breach your duty, but I'm not hurt, I don't have anything to sue you for. So once you start hitting those elements, you can sue. Now, when you ask about private property, the reason I mention all of those, even though it's a little complex, is the question is, why are you there? So they owe you different duties depending on who you are and depending on what jurisdiction. For example, usually if you're there for a commercial purpose and they're going to make money off of you, they owe you a higher duty to inspect, keep all of those things safe. They owe you a lower duty often if you're just an invitee, you're coming over as a guest to hang out, because they're not making money off you. You don't necessarily expect them to give their house a 100-point inspection because they're not a commercial place. And then lastly, if you're trespassing, they usually don't owe you any duty because you shouldn't have been on their property. And things like that happen with children. For example, you have a pool, and then all of a sudden, kids sneak into your pool. Well, now they're injured. Do you owe them a duty because you didn't have a fence or not? And again, as the law, different jurisdictions, some jurisdictions say you owe them no duty. Some jurisdictions say it's such an attractive thing to children that you should have known and you should have had some kind of protection.
Right. I can see that. Okay, so for people that travel abroad, what if they're in a legal situation outside of U.S. soil? What do you recommend them to do in that situation?
That's another situation where you really, really need to plan in advance. Just travel in general. I went to Guatemala a couple weeks ago. It was fun, but unfortunately, every couple blocks there was, people standing around with shotguns. Apparently, it's very violent, and so it pays to plan in advance where you're going anyway, so you can avoid legal trouble. Secondly, you should, if you're going to do certain things that you have a question about legally, you should consult a local attorney and an attorney here before you go and do those things. And then lastly, if you are already in trouble, you should always contact the embassy.
Okay, well, that's good advice. Okay, so for our new viewers, Thomas, we're going to talk about, going to kind of recap what to do in the event that you might be in a car accident. Now, I had a coworker that his nephew was in a car accident the other day, and of course, told him to call 844 Tom Fights, of course.
Appreciate it.
So, what should we do in the event that I'm in a car accident, regardless of the fault? What should we do?
My advice is, if you think you're injured, for your own health, you should go get evaluated. If you think it's an emergency, you should go to the hospital. While that's important, a lot of people also, again, think, okay, I can't afford this doctor bill, so I'm going to fight it out. A, it's not good advice health-wise, but secondly, though I'm not a doctor and I can't give you medical advice, but secondly, legally, I can tell you the insurance company is going to say if you were hurt, you would have went to a doctor, and then they're going to try to either deny your claim or say you're making up your accident, when really all of us know people that have went weeks and weeks and weeks being terribly sick because they didn't want to incur a bill. But what's important to note is when you're in an auto accident, you have some of the best insurance in the state. It's unlimited medical benefits for life as long as it relates to the injuries you sustained within that accident. So that should be the least of your concerns, and your concern should be getting better. That's the whole reason the law was passed.
Okay, now I'm on like a smart bus or a transport bus, and the bus or vehicle is involved in a car accident, and I'm injured. Would that still protect me under the no-fault law?
Yes. So luckily that you are protected. Now, this is a case that, can give a plaintiff attorney a nightmare. The bus statute, normally car accidents fall under the no-fault statute, and you have 1 year to sue. However, when accidents happen on a bus, there's also another statute that applies, and you have to give written notice to the transport entity. And that lessens your window, and you really want to, if that's the situation, you really, want to make a report at the scene. You always want to make a police report at the scene of any accident to document it, but you also want to contact the lawyer immediately and not wait on that one.
Well, I've been doing my research, Thomas, too. So we had a question last week about potholes, remember? And so I did my research, and I found out that they have a form for the Michigan Department of Transportation that if your repairs don't exceed $1,000, that you can get reimbursed. So you have to submit that form along with your receipt of if you had injury to your vehicle or anything like that. Then they will reimburse you. So I've been telling, if you don't have access to that, I can definitely email it to you, and you can let me know. So I've been working too on the side to try to answer some of these questions. One of our viewers asked about the song at the intro. And Thomas let me know that it was T. Grizzly, who I didn't know, but my son knows very well. I guess he is a YouTube sensation. So it's a really good song. So I was glad that I was hip enough to know that information. And my son said, make sure you say that on the air. So I had to say that for Elijah. Hi, how are you, Elijah? So if we could just recap about the school. So you're saying, now I'm getting the impression that I need to get life insurance for my 11-year-old.
It's an absolutely crazy world we live in. I mean, just the fact that an incident happened is absolutely absurd. I would always recommend, being prepared in every circumstance. I would also say, on the subject of that incident, a lot of people think that people just want money. That's what, lawsuits are about. But what people don't realize is it's about holding people accountable, and not just for revenge or, to reestablish the dignity of the individuals that are injured or their lives are taken. But it's also about ensuring this doesn't happen again.
Yes.
And I just want to, I have questions. Like, why wasn't this gentleman properly in therapy? If he had some therapy appointments, which I heard he did, why wasn't his mental health addressed? And especially if he has guns in the house, the question is, was that asked at the therapist's office? Do you have guns at the house? Do you have violent thoughts? I'm told that there's Facebook posts, and you mentioned the FBI, not to throw them under the bus because nobody wants to get on their bad side. But my question is, I'm told also that they were tipped off to this gentleman saying he was going to become a professional shooter. And the question is, what are we paying all this tax money for if, when you're telling the FBI somebody wants to shoot up a school and they're not able to take care of that?
I agree, Tom. It's just heart-wrenching to constantly keep going through this. And one of the things I talked about on the show today was what can we do? And since, the 90s with Governor Engler and him taking away a lot of the mental health facilities that we have in Michigan and a lot of them over the world, that is probably one of the biggest mistakes of our economy, is doing that, because now we have nowhere for these individuals to go. And it would just be like having a whole bunch of women that are pregnant and not having anywhere for them to deliver. And this is so important to me, the mental health aspect of it. Then we have this whole blue and red thing where, we're talking about gun control, we're talking about mental health. I don't think that it's either or. It's both of these issues. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Well, so a lot of people will say things like, I don't care about, a drug addict, or somebody else should take care of this person with mental problems. But what they don't realize is the person with mental problems that aren't addressed then becomes the community's problems. Mm-hmm. And the theory that you're just going to lock all these people up and throw away the key is such a waste of resources. What people also don't realize is while we're locking up nonviolent drug offenders for exercising their own choices, and while we're locking up mentally ill people instead of treating them for less money, those resources aren't used for things like when the FBI gets a tip and they're allegedly unable to find out who posted that. I don't know about the investigation, but my question is, with all the FBI's resources, why couldn't they have contacted that poster undercover and pretended to be somebody else? Why couldn't they, have investigated harder? And maybe they couldn't. Maybe they hit a dead end. That happens. But my point is, there's a lot of things. We hear about rape kits that sit on shelves and aren't tested. And the question is, everybody thinks that these things are unrelated, but the resources of law enforcement are strained, and we have to make some difficult choices. And the question is, do you want protection against people who are trying to violently hurt you, or do you want to lock up mentally ill people instead of treating them, and nonviolent drug offenders? Because while you're doing that and wasting, $40,000, $50,000 a year to lock these people up instead of, very small amounts to treat these addictions or mental health, you've got rape kits sitting on shelves not being tested, and you've got school shooters who weren't able to be found even after somebody reported them saying they want to become a professional school shooter.
It's definitely an issue in Congress and in the Senate, and they need to pass bills to make some changes. I know that CNN had a forum yesterday with survivors of the Florida shootings, and Senator Rubio was there. And, I commend Senator Rubio for even going. I mean, President Trump declined, and pretty much all the Republican senators declined to go here. And he kind of stood up and took the heat, because they gave it to him really bad. These kids are hurt, and it showed. They asked questions that I did not believe that they had on TV. One of the questions in particular that a high school, I think it was a 12th grade senior asked was if he would make a commitment today not to receive any money from the NRA. And I was very shocked. And of course, Senator Rubio tried to be really cool about it. And he was like, I sell my brand and my ideas. And basically, whoever wants to support him, he gives that right. Just like, that young man had the right to ask that question. And he used his, amendment right to do that. And he believes in the right to bear arms. And but I think that a lot of times we as regular individuals, not including you on this, we don't understand the legal part of it, because I know the NRA is a supporter of the Republicans and the Democrats, so everybody's guilty of taking money from them. So I don't know if we understand the whole legal mumbo jumbo and the whole political mumbo jumbo. And if he would have said yes or no, I don't think it would have mattered. What do you think about that?
I think, the problem is politicians shouldn't be allowed to take money from corporations in general. And so the NRA, the interesting thing about that is it's a private group. So regardless of their politics one way or the other, if a lot of individuals want to pool their money and give it to a politician because they believe in abortion or don't believe in abortion, or they're a pro-gun group or anti-gun group, I don't have as much problem with that. What I have a problem with is, let's say, a gun manufacturer, creating a group, perhaps like the NRA, and giving a bunch of money to them, or, any corporation creating these groups, then funding them. I believe that only individuals should be allowed to give money to politicians and not corporations.
Right. It's really sad because a big component that I think like these children and a lot of the people that live in Florida don't realize is that Florida is one of the biggest rifle manufacturers. So a lot of their money and success comes from the profit of these assault rifles. And it's kind of like, an uncomfortable subject that nobody wants to talk about. But in one hand, you got all of these billions and trillions of dollars coming from this that support the schools, because the NRA, they have a program that supports the schools and safety in the schools with or without guns that they offer. So it's not all so bad, but you got to have, in these situations, I think when you're grieving, you got to have somebody to blame, I think. So I don't know if it's totally, just all one person, or it's just hard to figure out. I don't know what to do. It's been bothering me. I don't know what to tell these children. I don't know what to tell their parents. I can only imagine. I've never been in a situation like that. But one thing I think that we all can agree on is that something has to change.
Yeah, and I again am not intimately familiar because it's not my case, but I will say that I'm told that there was a bullet fragment found in the shooter's backpack when he was in that school, and then he was not allowed to bring his backpack on campus. When you're in a situation just with common sense where somebody has a bullet in their backpack at a school, where you're so afraid of that person now that he's not allowed to bring his backpack, I'm wondering why the school, and I'm not saying that they didn't because I haven't read the case file, I'm wondering why the FBI wasn't informed of that, and wasn't able to then seize his computers, go through his computers, look at things like that. Maybe not completely off of the bullet fragment, but there's a lot of scary things that were allegedly already tipped off. His comment, the bullet fragment, and the question is, sometimes there's nobody to blame when there's no signs. I'm told the police repeatedly came to his house. There's a lot of people to blame here, and also the school in itself. I'm told he was expelled, and I understand that. But the problem is expelling somebody, not giving them an education and mental treatment, then resulted in this, because if somebody's willing to kill, they're willing to violate a trespassing order. So my question is too, what did they do to put him in therapy to address the fact that he had lost his he didn't have biological parents, he lost both his adopted
Doesn't
parents.
seem like nothing was done.
Yeah, and he's walking around with a bullet fragment in his backpack, and I understand that maybe it gets the kid's file off your desk to expel him, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong to expel him, but my question is, what was the follow-up
What
care?
was the follow-up? Well, we got a caller, Thomas, so we're going to see what they have to say. Hello, you're live on Attorneys R Us. This is Helen. How can we help you?
Hi, Helen. I had a question about an auto accident, if that's okay.
Sure. What's your name?
So I was in an accident about 3 months ago, and now I guess the insurance company is saying they want me to meet with one of their, I think they said it was like a independent medical examiner. I'm just trying to see, do I get to pick the doctor, or kind of, I don't know really what that is, and obviously the insurance company is not telling me a whole lot.
Okay, and what's your name?
My name's John.
Okay, John, so did you hear the question, Thomas?
Sure.
Okay.
So, in response to that, I would say it's a misnomer that they call their doctors independent medical evaluators. Basically, the insurance company often pays these doctors ridiculous amounts of money, and what happens is, in my opinion, large amounts of fraud on the insurance company's part. These doctors, when they're selected, again, know that the insurance company is paying for these reviews, paying a large amount of money, and they often, obviously, at that point are biased. And in my review of their work, I've seen them do outlandish things, and they get away with it because instead of providing medical treatment, they claim that they're just giving an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
If they really want it to be independent, the government requires us all to buy auto insurance. The contract that the insurance companies write often require you to go see their doctor in some cases. Now, sometimes they try to get you to see doctors that you don't have to. For example, if another person's car hit you, you don't have a contract with that person, and sometimes they'll request an independent medical evaluation, and often you can refuse to attend unless you're in litigation and the judge orders it, or there's discovery orders. But that being said, if it really was independent and the government's already making you buy auto insurance, why don't the government, have a doctor evaluate you? Mm-hmm. Instead of that way, the doctor's completely neutral. The government doesn't care if you're injured or not injured. They want the right result. Why would the insurance company pay ridiculous amounts of money, sometimes over $1 million, to a doctor in a year to have him issue opinions? Of course that person's going to be biased.
So this independent person is by the insurance company then?
Yeah, and they call it an independent doctor, but they're being paid. Sometimes groups will pop up that say they're going to select an independent doctor, and the insurance company will make a deal with them. But I've taken depositions of adjusters that say that they can pick their own doctor. Mm-hmm. So the insurance company's out there parading it as if, yeah, we ordered an independent medical evaluation from this company, and we didn't know who the doctor was, but often they do know who the doctor is, and the doctor knows who they are, and the doctor knows in order to keep getting that check, you can imagine what kind of opinion the insurance company wants you to issue.
Okay, John, did that answer your question?
It did. So I just want to make sure I'm not allowed to pick my doctor, right?
So that's a great question. You have a right to pick all your own doctors as well. So even though you have to get evaluated there, it's important that you research your doctor as much as you can, and you go to any doctor you want, because in the end, A, you need the best treatment. The insurance company doctor isn't going to provide the treatment, and then secondly, your doctor is going to have to battle that doctor if he tells lies about your health condition.
I would consult with the attorney and ask them what they advise. And if you don't have one, then by all means call 844-TOM-FIGHTS, and he will help you. Thank you so much for calling, John.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you guys for watching another episode of Attorneys R Us. I'm your host, Helen, and we will see you next Thursday at 1. And you have a great day.
Yeah, #1 ghetto boy. 248-632-PAIN. 24-hour hotline, We specialize in helping auto accident victims. You feel me? Call right now. Hey. Car accidents, they ain't no fun. Know the people you can call for a hit and run. Specialize in helping auto accident victims. It don't matter, they help men, women, and children. Can't spare your wealth without your help. And they 24 hours, call them if you need help. Call for anything, it don't matter what's the reason. They helping everybody, they on deck if you need them. Say somebody hit your car and they kept going. Just call the hotline and we got help coming. They gon' pull right up like they left coming. 248-632-PAIN, that's the best number. Yeah, make sure you call the hotline, we working 24 hours. 248-632-PAIN. You can't spend your wealth without your help, homeboy. Hey, hey, hey.